Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy. Only I can see the stranger in my granddaughter's photos. He has no face. I do not know who to tell this story to. Nobody will believe me. I wouldn't believe it myself if it had not happened to me and my family. But I do think I should tell it anyway, as a warning in case I can prevent the tragedy from striking others. Forgive me if I am overly formal. I am an old man and not used to the way people communicate these days, especially online. I do not do much social media. It was a friend who recommended to me to share my story here on this website, where people will believe tales like yours. I do not know if he means you are especially gullible or that you are open-minded, but let us assume the latter. So good, open-minded people of Reddit, let me tell you what happened to my great-granddaughter. It began 3 weeks ago. We have a habit. Little Celia and I had a habit. During the summer, she stays with her grandparents, who live right up the lane. And so in the afternoons, she always comes over for milk and cookies while I have tea, and she tells me stories about her day. Most of these stories involve her stuffed animals. She was a very imaginative child. Of course, a lot of her stories involve the characters on her iPad, too. She plays a game with animal people all living in a little town, and they do things like go shopping and plant gardens. She is very attentive to her video game garden and refuses to come out with me to tend the real garden with the strawberries I grow for her. A shame how addicted the children are these days. She tried to teach me to play, but I just can't get the appeal. In any case, one day she was telling me a story about some characters, either from the game or her imagination, when she suddenly asked me if I'd ever met the Faceless Man. I assumed he was a character from her game. He sounds rather scary, I said. He is scary, she told me. I wish he would go away. I asked her more about this Faceless Man, but she did not seem inclined to discuss him. The next time he came up was when we were out for ice cream. As we stood in line, she suddenly peered quite hard at a tall man in a suit standing outside a nearby store. I asked her what was wrong, and then the man turned and pulled sunglasses over his eyes, and her posture relaxed. She said, "I thought he might be the Faceless Man." "He appears to have a face," I said. "Yes," she said, relieved. "He's not the Faceless Man." Well, I asked her about this Faceless Man, who he is, when she sees him. She said that she mostly sees him near the park or sometimes outside the window. I asked her what his face looked like, and she gave me a most irritable look, like I had asked the stupidest question imaginable, and said he doesn't have one, that's why he's the Faceless Man. Well then, what does he have instead of a face? I asked. Is his head a pumpkin, like in Sleepy Hollow? In what? She asked, making me feel quite old and out of touch. I started explaining, but then she got impatient and looked it up on her little device and said, "Oh, the pumpkin has a face, Grandpa Vern. The Faceless Man doesn't have any face, not a pumpkin or anything else." "Well, he must have something," I said, trying to imagine. "Is it just skin with no features?" "No." She was becoming quite cross. "That would be almost like a doll with the face rubbed off or something. He's the Faceless Man because he has no face." "So what's there with..." Sorry, I choked over my own words there. "So what's there where his face should be then?" She made a frustrated sound in her throat. "Maybe you should ask him yourself. Why don't you talk to him?" "Well, where do I find him?" "He's standing behind you." This sent chills down my spine. I turned and looked around, but there was no one. Absolutely no one. And little Celia had gone back to her game. She told me not to bother her. Well, I decided this faceless man was imaginary, like so many of her made-up animal friends or her video game friends who became her make-believe companions during the 4 weeks of summer that she was stuck with us old people. I could not have been more deadly, tragically wrong. Celia was not sleeping well. Her grandparents were concerned. She seemed anxious, they said, and she never wanted to go outside or do much of anything except play on her iPad. They took it away, and she threw a terrible tantrum. When they sent her over to me for the afternoon, she came storming in, slammed the door, and sat down without a word and began stuffing her face with the cookies I had ready for her. "What is wrong?" I asked. "Grammy and Grandpa took my iPad and now he won't leave me alone," she said. "Who?" "The faceless man." I sat down opposite her, and it suddenly occurred to me that this faceless man might be a concoction of hers used to get her way. Sort of like the dog ate my homework. She was blaming him for things in order to convince her grandparents to give her more screen time. I asked, "Why won't he leave you alone without the iPad?" She sighed in frustration. "When I'm on the iPad, he doesn't bother talking to me because I'm busy. He doesn't like to be rude and interrupt. But if I'm not on the iPad, if I'm by myself walking outside or reading or doing almost anything else, he comes over and tries to get me to talk to him." "And what does he say?" "He asks if I want to see his face." "I thought you said he has no face." "He doesn't." "So how—" I bit off the question, seeing as she was getting flustered. Then I said, "Can I meet this faceless man? He doesn't like strangers." "But you aren't a stranger?" She shook her head vehemently, sat there breaking her cookie into crumbs, and then finally said, "He says he picks people when they're born." "So I can't see him?" He seemed a convenient boogeyman for her to blame all of her ills. But she said, "You can see him. He's in my photos. Not the close-up ones, but the crowd ones. He's in all of them." And even though this was surely a tall tale, her statement sent a peculiar chill up my spine. I was beginning to feel quite alarmed. So I asked her to show me the photographs. She told me to open Facebook. That is an app I actually have, and I pulled up my account on my phone, pleased to be included in her little corner of social media. Until she shot me down by telling me that she doesn't even have Facebook, that I would have to look at her mother's account because I don't have Snapchat or Insta or TikTok. Also, I couldn't see details on the little phone screen, so she had to help me find my password and log into my computer. She showed me some pictures from various albums taken by her parents and grandparents. Most were close-ups of her and family, but there was one wider shot of a park, the park just up the street actually, and she pointed, her finger coming to a rest on the screen on a man in the background, sitting on a bench with his back to us. His face, obviously, was not visible. He was wearing a suit. That's the end of part 1. Thanks for taking the time to listen to one of my videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.